Hi, good evening, everyone. We're starting a live with an extremely interesting guest, Vandita Morarka. Um, I am Saumya from Project Baala, and we're going to start this session once Vandita joins in. So, our guest today, Vandita Morarka, is somebody who has so much experience. I'm personally extremely excited to meet her. We're just going to wait for a couple of minutes till she joins us. Hi to everyone who's already here. Today's session is going to be extremely interesting. We've got a leader, an entrepreneur who's been actively working in the space of empowerment, and we're going to have a conversation around women empowerment today. Just waiting for a couple of minutes before Vandita joins us. Hi, everyone. Really nice to be on Instagram Live again. It's been almost a year since I personally hosted an Instagram Live. So it's interesting and exciting today's topic, and I hope whoever's here can have a great time listening to the intersections of women empowerment in rural areas versus urban areas. And no one better than Vandita to have a conversation with this on.
Hi, Saumya.
Hi, Vandita. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Very good. Am I audible, visible clearly?
Yes. Am
Wonderful.
I audible and visible?
All good. All good. It's probably one of those very few times when the internet and technology cooperates.
Hello.
But Vandita, it's so nice to meet you. I think we've had a lot of intersections when it comes to the different fellowships that we're doing.
Yes.
But the first time that I'm actually getting to see you. So great to have you here. Extremely excited for the conversation that we're having. So should we kick off our discussion for the day?
Oh, definitely. But I do want to say that it's a pleasure to be speaking with you. We have virtually interacted, but this is just so nice. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll start by introducing myself, Vandita. I am Saumya. Of course, we've met outside, and I'm the founder of the organization Baala. Interestingly, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this here, but it's Baala's birthday today. So quite an exciting day for us. Yes, thank you. And so the organization started exactly 4 years ago, and we're working solely with the purpose of transforming menstrual health and hygiene for women and girls across the country. But we specialize in working with rural and marginalized communities across. across. We've also got projects running in Nepal, Ghana, and our team is all under the 27. We're all extremely passionate about the work that we're doing, and there are a lot of different models that we created: education, product choices, livelihood, but all centered around menstruation health and menstrual hygiene. So that's us. We're based out of, and we're extremely excited to have you here today, Vandita. And I'm going to pass it on to you now to talk more about what One Future Collective does. Boss, your
Thank you. Firstly, congratulations. I know how much of a milestone it is every year that you're able to sustain this sort of impact. So great going, and I'm hoping for lots more years to come. And thank you for having me on this very special day. I'm going to quickly introduce myself and my organization. My name is Vandita Murarka. I use the pronoun she and her. And I started One Future Collective in December of 2017. We've spent a year and a half in the pandemic, so it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it's been over 3 years that we're around. Apart from what One Future Collective does, I'm a human rights lawyer and a rights-based strategy consultant. And One Future Collective comes from these very common underpinnings of what I wanted to see in the world, right? So I would ask you, anyone listening in, to think about, are you solving for the cause or are you solving for the consequence? And this is the question we keep asking ourselves. And this is the genesis of where One Future Collective starts from. We started with the idea of what happens if an organization focuses on social justice over social service and builds capacity in young people to create that world where social justice is prevalent. Of course, we've changed, our vision changes, how we do it changes, but what we want, the outcome from our world, has remained the same. And yeah, that's been quite exciting. It's been about 3 years for us. And it's been an interesting journey. We work in urban areas, so this is also an interesting conversation because we work in different contexts. We work in
Yes.
capacity building of organizations that are in rural areas, but not directly. Yes, so over to you, Sam.
So I think, Vandita, that was the biggest motivation. I love this, the cause versus the consequence. What are you actually focusing on? And I think the whole intersection of us working towards empowering women in communities, but us being completely focused in rural and your work being focused in urban, I thought it'll be a great conversation to have about, what the differences are and the similarities. And in fact, while prepping for this, I read this very interesting stat on a study that was done in Tamil Nadu, which said that in health-seeking behavior, 77% in rural India had no say, whereas the same for that in urban is 43%. For family planning, 33% in rural versus 74% in urban have had decision making power. So that's a huge, almost a 40 percentage point gap in both of these, which are so important when it comes to women empowerment and actually making decisions within a household. And only 33% in rural India contribute towards family income versus 47 in urban. So there's definitely like a huge disparity in the participation of the roles that women play in rural and urban India. But I think that till the time we don't reach 100, neither of us are going to be satisfied, right? So I think the gap, irrespective of how big the gap is, the fact that the gap exists is why I believe organizations like yours and that's what the discussion for today also is centered around. So I'll jump right into the first question that I have to you, which is, what does women empowerment personally mean to you, and what significance it holds to you?
Right. Thank you for that question. And also going back to the data you shared, right? I think it's interesting that if there's a phrase, right? If you beat data enough, it will give you any answer. And I feel like that's what a lot of the data that reaches us does. Because I'm forced to ask that, what does empowerment mean? And I'll link that to the question you asked me. Is a woman only empowered if she brings in family income, right? Or is her work at home not valued? For example, most of the actual farmers in the country are women, but on
Mm-hmm.
paper, the title of the land is owned by the man. So in that case, who's bringing in the income? And this is what brings me to the question of women empowerment. I feel like for so long, our ideas of empowerment have been defined by what is the masculine idea of empowerment, right? A masculine idea of empowerment is, I go out, I earn so much, I provide for a certain like family structure, 4 people, 6 people, whatever that might be. I might behave a certain way. I have certain types of relationship. That has become the go-to definition of empowerment. And to me, firstly, like even going away from the biological essentialist part of like doing a male-female empowerment thing, for me, empowerment fundamentally needs to question what it means. It needs to question, is it only a masculine idea of empowerment, or are there different pathways to empowerment, and can women seek this empowerment in the different ways that they may want to? I think that very option before they even start being empowered is necessary, because otherwise it's not true empowerment, right? They don't have that choice. So I think one
Yeah.
would be that. To me, fundamental, just to reiterate, choice is an essential part of empowerment. It's essential that women have the choice to do what they want with their lives. I think that's a massive part of empowerment. I think a second part of empowerment that I would definitely stress upon is looking at intersecting identities of a woman, right? Who am I apart from being a woman? What is my religious location, my caste location, geographical location? What language do I speak? Am I the first generation learner in my family? All of those questions have to intersect with my identity as a woman. And then I have to think about what empowerment for me means, and to ensure that empowerment for me does not mean oppression for another community. I think that for me is extremely pertinent when I think about empowerment. And
Agreed.
third, I think, we started with choice. I would say decision making is integral. One, do women have the choice? And then third, do we have decision making power? Because
Yep.
essentially, you can call us for a consultation and you can listen to us, but do we get to decide what is finally being done? And if that is not happening, there's only so much value to my voice being heard but not actually being listened to. So I would make that distinction and say decision making. And this could be in whatever setup, right? It could be my mother in the household. It could be me in my office space. It could be me as a student in a classroom. Are my voices heard as much and listened to as much?
I completely agree. And I also, a lot of times, as you were saying, the intersecting ideas are not thought about. And especially in a country like India, I think giving a carpet answer for what empowerment can mean is not correct for us to give like a blanket statement saying, this community or this a woman needs this in the country to be empowered. I think thinking about their roles, thinking about the externalities, the context, that's extremely important. Even when we have a focused approach towards just working on menstruation and menstrual hygiene, the contexts vary so much. So for us to provide a solution where we sit here in Delhi in our offices thinking, this is what needs to be done for the community, is not the approach that is empowering. It has to come from the community. So I really liked, that part where you spoke about the intersectionality, and also, Anta, about the decision making. Essentially, you use this interesting word, which is seeking to be empowered. I believe like the first step towards empowerment is that if we enable a person that they can seek that empowerment. So I do believe that here also that's very important. And the part about the consulting us and not taking decisions, I just want to quickly share. We were working with a government, one of the governments in India, and they're sitting on thousands of crores for menstrual hygiene. And we were asked to come in and, advise according to the data we've collected, etc. And very basic questions were asked about, are the big pads for bigger women, are the small pads for smaller women? And I was shocked because this was a committee of 12 men making decision for thousands of crores for lakhs of women in that district. And they didn't have a single woman who could be part of that decision-making process. So I believe there, like the consultation versus the actual decision should lie with women for women. That's also an essential step. So that brings me to our next question, which is, do you think the term empowerment holds a different meaning in urban or rural India? What are your thoughts on that?
So I really struggled with this question, and I will bring this question back to you as well. I don't know, one, if I'm the right person to answer this, but I will answer it from my context as an urban woman who's born, brought up in Bombay, right? I do think empowerment can mean different things for people in rural and urban contexts, but then I also believe that empowerment can mean something different for me and my friend, and both live in Bombay. So in that sense, I would say any idea of empowerment needs to have enough of a core, enough of a core, right? Like decision making, choice, etc. But also enough flexibility to allow for individual notions of empowerment or what we may seek as empowerment. So I would definitely say it differs. But again, like I said, we'll just reinforce that by saying it differs for everyone. Again, I think in terms of the rural and urban context, the reason I think some of it also differs is because it's not just about gender, right? It's not just about my identity as a woman. It's also that so many services are just not available in either of the regions. You may have something that's available in a rural region, it's not available in an urban area. And I feel like these differences that exist create further differences for other oppressed communities, within which being a woman is one of that, right? So I feel like having that parity of services would be a stepping point to bring everyone to like common ground and then say, okay, what do you need to be empowered? I think that. I'll give you a small example. So we didn't work in the rural area, it was a semi-urban sort of town. And over there, what would happen is after eighth grade, there were no, like after eighth or 10th grade, there was no college. So, like, if you have to go to college, you have to go to a city. Now, no one
Right.
wants to send their daughters to a city. So, how do you solve for something that is so systemic? Do you change mindsets to send daughters to the city? Which is a great thing, but you're going to lose 3 to 5 years by the time those mindsets change. And there's a whole generation of women who will never get to go to college. Or do you bring in government schemes that incentivize so that they go to, they get to go to college? Or do you just bring a college to that area? Like, do you bring a college to that town, to that district? Do you locally provide education services? Having said this, I don't have an answer. I know when we worked there, we worked with them basis their context, and their context behavioral change work really worked. Like, so what we did is we got the boys to say, we will not go to college if you don't send our sisters to college, because it was easier to work with younger boys than with older parents. But I don't have an answer. Right? Like, empowerment looks so different. When I don't have access to education, the starting line for empowerment looks very different for women in rural and urban areas.
I think I completely agree. This is a question I think that I don't think has a correct answer. I believe it's, it's a discussion, or it's like a free flowing thought wherein, as the same thing that you said about rural and urban in India, and that I did my undergraduation in England, and I was very actively volunteering in England, and I went as a 18-year-old after volunteering in India with families and friends and school programs. And the difference, or the fact that even volunteering existed in the UK for the first, for the first few months, to just adjust to the idea of what the huge difference in volunteering meant in both the contexts, was such a shock for me. So again, the starting point is different in every area, but as when we started the conversation, and I said that till the time we don't reach that 100% with the stats that we were talking about, I think that gap, irrespective of how big the gap is, till the time the gap exists, there's scope to be empowered, there's scope to seek that empowerment in the community. So again, I don't think there can be a correct answer.
Yeah.
Also, like, even Bala, when we started this, when I thought about the organization, it came from the fact that I'd grown up in urban India. I'd gone to a school where before I started menstruating, I was told about the process, both in school by my parents. I was made aware of the product choices available to me. But
Right.
when I started extensively volunteering a few years later and discovered that this was not the case in rural India, you do realize there is a huge gap and you are more empowered. But then again, it's not like the same myths and taboos don't exist over here. It's just that, we're a few years ahead, and we can just bridge that sooner through programs like what you run and what we run. Which brings me to the third part, which is, what is Project Bala actually doing in this? So to give everyone over here and also you an overview of how we are thinking about empowerment at the organization, is that we've got a three-pronged approach towards solving or creating a solution for menstrual hygiene. The first step is education. So for us, we've created this curriculum that is divided into 7 different modules, and each module is focused on systematically targeting, the thought process around, say, the biology of menstruation. What are the hygienic practices that are being undertaken, which may not actually be hygienic and need to kind of, be reworked and rethought. So we don't go and saying, "Aapko ye karna chahiye." We go and saying, this is the process that you've been following. The reason why it doesn't work or is not impactful is this, this, and this. And this is what we could do or think about doing. So it's like a systematic attack on the existing solutions and how we can provide those nudges to change that. And I do believe that that's a form of empowerment for us as an organization, because we're enabling women and girls to understand what they're following currently, what is it that they can eliminate from that current thought process and adapt, with the new changes. For example, things like, Didi, mahine ke time baal nahi dho sakte kya? Can we wash our hair or not when we're on a period? We explain as to why it could have been prevalent, a few years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, even like, 50 years ago, why it may not be prevalent now. So that's the first part of our solution, which is educating in a systematic manner, which can lead to behavior change and nudges within the community. The second thing that we do is make a product choice available to the community. So again, I believe that choice having the community having that choice is, fantastic, that they can choose that health seeking behavior that we enable within the community is the second form of empowerment for us. And the third one is, so when we go into the communities, we disseminate these awareness modules through different mediums. These medium could be one-on-one workshops, it could be the school digital library that we're very excited about that we have. Then there are these booklets that we distribute within the communities. We've also got like a lot of online modules, etc. So the first part is the awareness. Then the product is made available to the community, and that so we promote reusable and sustainable menstrual absorbance. So our pads can be used for 2 years. So we provide that pad within the communities. And third thing is we train few women within that community into disseminating the awareness modules and also into selling the pads. So we close the entire loop of the model, and they can then take over the entire project of, earning a livelihood for themselves and also disseminating, becoming the local contact point for any information, feedback, any sort of communication regarding the sanitary napkins. So giving the independence to the women to actually, sell and take over the entire onus of running menstrual hygiene for their own communities. That's what empowerment is for us at Project Baala. I think we still got a long way to go, but right now we're quite excited because we're doing these holistic models in a few places in Bihar and a few places in Uttar Pradesh, and the response we're getting from communities after a year where they've received the pads and now the women are being able to sell it and are telling us things like, "Didi, मैं अपने बेटे के school के लिए I can use the money," etc. I believe that's empowerment where they can make their decisions for themselves. So that's what we're doing at Baala, and of course now we would love to hear about what One Future Collective is working on in Sphere.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love the approach. I love that it empowers the community and creates a community-based model with very little intervention requirements. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We're going to share a little bit about One Future Collective or OFC. When we started, I think we knew what we want to do, but we didn't necessarily know how. So we tried a bunch of things. And it took us a year or so to figure out how we want to do this, right? So right now, I would say that our vision has always been a world built on social justice. What does the world look like when it is built on social justice and when it is led by communities of care? I will expand a little bit on that. Now, within that, for a long time, we focused on let's work on gender, mental health, feminist leadership. We did a bunch of work under that. And then a year and a half ago, we realized that there was just so much intersecting, overlapping work that we could no longer do thematic work. Like even when you work on menstrual health, right, you are going to work on women's financial independence and the fact that they need sanitary products, they need choice. It needs to be contextualized to their community. And that's what we realized with our work. So we did away with a lot of that. And we realized that as an organization, we have strategic goals that we want to reach. The way we do it is through a 5+1 model. The 5+1 model is basically, it's a circular model. We start with research, knowledge, leadership development, advocacy, and community building. And these are different streams of work that we do. And +1 is solution modeling, where we experiment and we bring out a solution as a way to show that it is possible. So currently we have 2 solution models, which is one is the Fem Justice Center, which provides and creates capacity for providing trauma-informed feminist care for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And we have the COVID-19 Mental Health Project, which is focused on rehabilitation based and rooted in mental health, both during COVID and after COVID.
Nice.
And then, of course, with projects, there are different things. Now, these are just 2 of our solution models. We still do a lot of other work, research, knowledge, etc. And the easier way for us to do this was our goals, right? And for anyone listening in, our goals are 3 key goals now. One is building the power of people to organize, mobilize, and take action. Second is enhancing the safety, well-being, health of oppressed and marginalized or vulnerable groups. And third is embedding social justice knowledge in interpersonal relationships or micro-communities. So these are just larger goals that we want to reach. Right? Within this, we have sub-goals around, do we want to focus on cure civic rights? Do we want to focus on feminist justice, on mental health? Do we want to focus on building just relationships in urban settings, right? The just relationship could be between you and your friend, it could be between you and your partner, it could be between you and your parents. So, a lot of undoing of harm, a lot of behavioral change work, a lot of knowledge and advocacy work, where we also look at like changing government policy, changing laws, possibly in the future also look at like filing litigation where required. So we're a evolving organization, but we're also a human rights organization. So often it's difficult to bring it down tangibly into, okay, these are the two, three things we do. But I hope that it gives you a sense of what we've been doing. And if I
Absolutely.
may,
And yes, of
sorry,
course.
if I may from a programmatic lens, for example, we run the One Future Fellowship, which is a unique feminist leadership fellowship.
Mm.
Or we have Curing the City program that looks at building cure leaders who take action in their community, but from a civic perspective. So working with your municipalities, for example, in Bombay, you'd be working with BMC to getting things changed in your community. So just to give you an idea of what this really looks like in action.
I love that. That's such an interesting program. I think young people in communities, urban communities across India would love to have some sort of say and ownership of bringing change within their local communities. Also, Vandita, I read about the Airbnb petition that you've launched, and I would love for you to also share that with everyone here. We would love to support you into getting the signatures because I think that's a brilliant idea and much needed at this time. So if you could share a little more about that too.
No, thank you so much for bringing that up. So I'm a fellow with Change.org, and Change.org asked us a simple question, which was, these are not perfect solutions, but what is it that a petition could help change? How could you mobilize your communities around that? And I've been thinking about this. We did a research study earlier funded by the MJ Foundation, which looked at domestic violence and the response of civil society organizations during the pandemic. And the biggest concern was emergency housing. I'm going to take a minute to explain why this was such a concern, right? Now,
Please.
imagine when the pandemic hit, you couldn't even leave your house. Now, if you're a survivor of domestic violence and you want to get access to emergency housing, what is the first question they're going to ask you? They're going to ask you for a COVID negative test. And a COVID negative test requires government documentation. Any survivor is not able to leave their house with government documentation. You are leaving in an emergency, and often your government documents are in control of the person abusing you. So, what happens then? No shelters were able to give support to survivors. I mean, if I think about it, even if I wanted to bring in a survivor to my housing society would not allow that person. Even if we got people in, the shelters were overflowing because there was just no space. A shelter with capacity for 50 people had 100, 150 people. So we're not asking Airbnb to provide housing. Right? That's just not realistic. They can't do it in the long term. The government needs to step in. But what Airbnb can do, and interestingly, they've done it in other countries, is provide emergency housing. Can you provide enough housing for enough duration of time so that a survivor, once they leave their house, they don't have to go back? Like they're not forced to go back because they don't have access to a living situation. I mean,
Right.
recently, I think yesterday, Airbnb launched this support campaign for Afghani refugees, saying that they will provide support to 20,000 refugees who need housing support. So Airbnb has done it in the past. No worries. And our question is, why would they not do it in India, right? So that is our petition. So if you're listening, please sign the petition. Having more signatures means having more support and having more of a leg up to tell Airbnb that, look, this is something that your users and your hosts want. Because if 10,000 people sign it, at least 1,000 or 2,000 of them are Airbnb users. So it helps us build that pressure to get them to do this in India. They have a proven model. There's already enough information. They know how to do this, which is why we didn't ask someone else. They've already done it and they should be doing it in India too.
I completely agree, and I loved the idea when I read it on the group, Vandita. So what we'll do is we'll plug in the petition on our bio as well, and everyone who's listening in, and also whoever we can get to support the petition and sign. We'll try our best to garner that support. I think it's great, and whatever little that I think that's the smallest thing that all of us can do right now. And I would request everyone who's listening or will watch this video to please just take a minute and sign that petition. I think we're struggling with Vandita's internet. Hi, Vandita, am I audible? Oh, so I think Vandita's dropped out. It could be the connectivity, so we're going to give her another minute to join in. Thank you for everyone who is here. If you already have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll take it up. We've had a question already from Yash, and Yash, we'll definitely take that up. I'm going to message Vandita and ask her. Okay, awesome. Just accepting the request, Vandita. Give me a second. I'm trying to accept the joining request.
Hi, my apologies. Instagram suddenly crashed, but I'm back now.
Yes, I can hear you well again.
Okay, perfect.
For 15 seconds, I wasn't sure if it was me or you, and I was just
So sorry.
no problem at all. So I think we were just talking about the petition and the fact that I'm going to put that onto our bio as well, and we can get everyone who's interested to sign in the petition. And I honestly feel like it's the easiest, quickest, and best thing that we can do as a community at this point in time to support women and others who are struggling with violence. The next question that I have for you is very interesting. We had a question from Yash or Yashdi, I'm not sure with the Instagram handle, about the role that men or other genders or other people who play in the conversation of empowerment. So the question is, can men and others be allies in women's empowerment? And if yes, how can they contribute towards this endeavor?
Right. No, that's a great question. I just want to say that they can only be allies. Like, I don't see any other role for them, or at least that they should not see other roles for themselves. I think there are very simple, easy ways to be allies. One of the first is not just recognizing your privilege. I feel like a lot of us stop at recognizing our privilege and think this is the privilege I have. But to then actively think of ways in which, one, you can use that privilege to create space for others who don't have that privilege. And second is, how can you dismantle your own privilege, right? Which will sometimes look difficult, which will sometimes mean saying no to an opportunity. Like, for example, if I'm invited to a panel, I don't always do it, and it's still a learning practice. But I'm trying to do this where I'm like, would you rather, like, do you have representation on your panel? And if not, here are some people you can call. And if you can't call me and them, then please call them. I'm happy to step back. And I'm thinking about how many really do that, right? Like, do they do that at all? How many boys do that at home? Something as simple as like, if you do that at home, there's a little extra left, it's probably given to the boy. And how many boys would say that's wrong and maybe I want to share it with my sister or I want to share it with my sibling? And those are such small ways in which you can be allies and check your privilege. So I think starting from that in your own households and in your own, like, your workspace, your office, all of that is so important. And then, of course, from there, you can go on to do so much more. Like, actively, if you're someone in a senior leadership position, actively mentor younger women. Younger women often don't get the same sort of mentoring that young men do. Please break away from the idea that you can't mentor women or you can't be alone with a woman or something. I think that is very important. If you're in classroom settings, otherwise, even forge social relationships with women that are not entirely based in romantic and or sexual ideas. I think there is a need for different genders to be able to engage in a way that is not rooted in some sort of like biological need. I think that's quite an interesting way to know the other person and get to know what their needs are. Yeah, I mean, I think just to start off, also, these are some good ways to do it. What about you? How do you answer?
Absolutely. So, I recently was part of this great conversation where a lot of leaders from across the world, we were on Zoom talking about the work that we do. And after that, we had a reflection session. And like it was quite uncanny. The two of us had the same reflection where when women were talking, they would hurry up and they would quickly wrap up, what they were talking about and get done with it. And we always had that feeling of we eating up someone else's time, or nobody wants to listen to us sort of baseline or the thought process, whereas with the guys they would take their good all of the time that they required, or with ease they could talk about everything that they needed to complete it. And I know it's a very generic statement to make right now, but it was a reflection from that particular session that we had that day, and it made us think that these are the little things that we can do where we can prompt others who may not be as empowered as us and try to bring them on the same baseline at least to start off from. So, just the basic things of uplifting people around you within the community to at least get them at the same starting level. And then, of course, it's their choice as to what they believe they would like to say or not say, contribute, not contribute, etc. But at least make them feel included. Or and one thing that you said, that was one person's empowerment should not be an oppression for someone else. So being cognizant of that, and just a little more inclusive in your approach. Little things like, if guests are over at home, and a simple thing as go get a glass of water should be a question that's equally addressed to both children at home, irrespective of their genders, or irrespective of where or what they're used to seeing or doing. So I think that's just very little things that can go a long way into just changing the fundamental belief around roles and around empowerment. With that, I'm going to leave questions to the audience. I know we've not got too many people here, but I had a fantastic time interacting with you, Vandita. And we're going to put this up on Instagram. Hopefully, if things work out, I'm really not sure how the whole upload here, upload there happens, but hopefully I'll be able to, once we end the live, hopefully it goes to the right place and a lot of other people can see it. But everyone here, if you have any questions for us, we'd love to take those. And if not, I have a few questions that I would love to ask you.
No, of course. Same actually. I don't know if that's okay in the format because I've been thinking of it and I'm like, am I also allowed to ask questions here? Because I do have questions. So maybe we can do that if there are none.
Yes. So till the time we wait for people to even ask, I think one interesting one was that any person professionally that you've looked up to, or any tips or any mantra that you go by when you think about your work.
So for the first part of the question, I used to when I was like a lot younger. I'm not that old now, but like when I was a lot younger. But I realized soon that for me, like the very value of feminist leadership means that I don't see individuals as heroes, or as leaders. I see communities as leaders, and I think that has really transformed how I see leadership. So I definitely see communities as leaders, right? Like if I'm working on a particular project, the community that's driving that project, or just young groups of young people who are doing so much, like be it at their college or school or just outside, I see those as leaders, and I draw a lot of like inspiration and hope from that. On the second part, so there's this quote and a book which says, "What's the point of a revolution if you can't dance?" And I think that's something I try to hold very close to me because it's so easy to be burnt out and exhausted when we're doing this work. There's just so much emotional labor that all of us in this work are doing day to day. And I don't want to forget that I came here because I felt joy and hope and possibility. And I want to ensure that I continue to hold that within me when I do this work. What about you?
So, this is I love that, by the way. I loved your thought on that. And for me, today we had a conversation with one of our rural sellers. So, Sita ji, she's somebody who's in Alvar. She was married off at a young age, has two children. She's still, she's just turning 30, etc. And she's had two children who are going to school, so she's done her domestic duties, etc. now. But now she's taken the complete responsibility of, becoming the sole seller for us in this huge district of Alwar, where she gets on, we're trying to get her like her personal vehicle now, but she would get on her neighbor's bike, go door to door, try to sell the pads. She would film a selfie video, and she was given a smartphone, and just rotate it over WhatsApp. She would make the decision of going to the panchayat in different districts, in different blocks, and actually getting them together, etc. Where she made a decision that she needs to get out, and she needs to get her own independence to be able to make choices for herself and for her family. I love her passion, and I love how she has the audacity. Imagine, in a district or in a rural setting, a woman on a bike with a backpack of sanitary napkins. So again, the whole thought of a woman being on a bike with a backpack of something is stigmatized as sanitary napkins, and trying to go door to door to talk to women, to talk to other menstruators, and give them that and to share that empowerment with them, to give them that choice. I love her, and I love the passion she has. And that person, she really inspires me. And and I hope we can see her bringing a lot of change within the communities that she's working in, inspiring younger girls. So that's that. I don't think people have questions for us, Vandita. So we can wrap up the session unless there's something you would like to say, add, ask.
No, I don't think there's much. I would just say congratulations again because I know
Thank
what
you.
a special feeling it is. And I want to congratulate you on all the wonderful work. Project Baala has done some really interesting work with menstrual health and hygiene. And I love how it has taken into account the multiple needs of women in these contexts. And it's not just pushed menstrual products, right? It's done such a great job of being a holistic organization. And I know you started by saying that that's one of the things you love. And it really shines with you. So thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Thank you, Vandita. I think I've enjoyed myself so much. Usually, we're having a fight about who's going to do the live because we dread live sessions. But this has been fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed, I love the thoughts that you've had towards creating One Future Collective, and how also, you're thinking about things like mental health, violence, in communities which usually don't get the platform that they require. And I love that you're getting the youth to participate in bringing that change within their own communities. I think that's brilliant, and there's a huge scope for that. So thank you, and I really hope we can do some good work together. Thanks
Likewise.
again, and see you
Thank you so
soon.
much. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.